So just do a few minutes silent meditation and then Heart Sutra. So please visualize Guru Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front of you, where the Buddha statue is. Very vividly holding the view that he is actually here, in a subtle form, in a body of light. So you shouldn't think this is imagination, this is reality. So as we recite the sutra, we should vividly imagine that we're hearing it for the first time, spoken by Shakyamuni Buddha, and that there is no distinction between Shakyamuni Buddha and your own spiritual teacher. So recall to your mind the description, the form and the qualities of the Buddha. Even if it's not appearing very clearly to your mind, strongly feel he is actually here. Recite the sutra. Thus that I hear at one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vultures Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharadvatiputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odour, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. So we'll meditate briefly on refuge and bodhicitta. So we just try to get as clear a sense in your mind as you can what those two things really mean to you. Lama Zopa Rinpoche explains bodhicitta as letting go of self and cherishing others. Holding the well-being and happiness of others as our most dearly treasured ideal. So even if we feel this is not the reality for me at the moment, can't honestly claim that I put others first all of the time, or even much of the time. The point is to make this our goal. However far off it seems to us at the moment is not the point. But to make an inner decision to train our mind more and more to be concerned for others. More and more our motivation for practicing the spiritual path to become for the sake of others. And this motivation, this aspiration, is the very heart of our Dharma practice as Mahayana Buddhists. So we can also say this is our refuge. So with this thought, and with the Lama, Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, as the inspiration, the example of that selfless wish for others' happiness, we recite the prayer. Sangye chudang tsoki chonam la changchu padu dagni kyam suche dagi chenyen ki pe sonam ki tola penche sangye drukpa sho Sangye chudang tsoki chonam la changchu padu dagni kyam suche Dagi chenyen gi pe sonam gi tola penche sangye drukpa sho Sangye chudang sogi chonam la changchu padu dagni kyam suche Dagi chenyen gi pe sonam gi tola penche sangye drukpa sho. Mandala offering. Page 22. Om Saji Bhagi Chukshing Me Do Dram Ri Rabling Ji Ni De Gen Badi Sangye Jing Du Mik Te Wagi Doku Nam Da Jing La Jepa Jo Omidam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Visualize Guru Shakyamuni Buddha coming to the crown of your head, turning round, becoming smaller. His body melts into golden light and nectar, which flows down through your central channel, blessing your body, speech and mind. All your negative karmas, delusions, obscurations and suffering are purified. Your body becomes very pure and clear, like crystal. Your mind becomes very still, peaceful and blissful. Your mind merges with the holy mind of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha. Resting in bliss, absorbed in emptiness. Very gently relax your concentration and bring the meditation to an end. Nice to see so many of you here in December. Okay. So, Bodhisattva vows. Has anybody been following up on those and attempting to bring them into your day-to-day life or your meditation?
I've been reading through them.
That's very good. That's the first step. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I apologise. I
Not at all.
discovered it in my drafts folder this morning.
Ah.
I haven't pressed the right button.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, David. You did send it to me actually, but not in a form that I was able to digest because my computer doesn't like that form. But it's now gone to everyone on the PDF, so you've all got it. If you haven't seen it, should have got it on the email today. So that's really good actually, that version, because it gives them all in very concise form, which is easy to learn, and then it gives quite an extensive commentary, which is very, very good. So it's one way to practice Dharma. That's all you need. You don't need anything else. If you learn those vows and you read a commentary so that you know what they all mean, that's the whole path. That's everything you need to do. So it's one way, to simplify your Dharma practice, I suppose. Yeah. So, but any comments on reading through them? Anything that struck you? Oh, anybody?
I only opened it today.
Yeah.
I think even just a little bit, a couple of weeks ago, it was just try and think about one each day.
Yeah.
Just to
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's very good.
so one of them,
Yeah.
and
Yes. Don't try and digest them all in one session. Yeah. No, that's a really good idea. Yeah. Read one a day. Read one a day and think about it a little bit. That would be great practice to do. Thank you. Any other thoughts about the vows generally? I mean, how many of you have actually taken them? Adam has. David has. You have. Yeah. You have. You haven't?
No.
You're off the hook then, Charlotte. Right, so, but yeah, most of us have taken them, and yeah, okay. Well, do you have any thoughts about it?
I don't know if I'm a bit behind with everything, and I don't think I'm on the email list.
Oh, I see, okay. Are you not?
I don't think so.
Oh, I'm so sorry, that's...
I just wonder whether, because
yeah.
I don't think I've ever got one. I was thinking that when you was...
Oh, goodness, right. I don't know how that's happened.
That's
I'll put you on and I'll send you that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it's, you know, you'd think they would be in more different books and different places, but they're not altogether so accessible. And that is a really good version, David, there from Geshe Tashi. Yeah. Was that? That wasn't the door, was it? Or was that was a ping on your...
No, just checking you're not
machine.
on that particular one, Charlotte.
Right, okay. I don't, that's an oversight. I don't know how that's happened. Right, okay, I'll put you on. Yeah. Right. Okay, so any other thoughts or questions about the vows? Because I'm going to move on shortly, so got a little bit more time on that if you want. Okay, you're all happy with them? Good. Right, we'll move on. So, the Bodhisattva vows, or these 18 and 46 that David's just sent round on the emails, is one form, if you like, of how to practice engaging bodhicitta. Yeah. So as we talked about, you know, there's these two levels which are explained in Shantideva's text as the aspiring or wishing bodhicitta, wanting to become a bodhisattva, right? And yes, I want to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, so I will practice the Mahayana path. Is wishing bodhicitta, and then, or aspiring bodhicitta, and then doing it is engaging bodhicitta, right? So if you are keeping those 18 root vows and 46 secondary vows, you are practicing the engaging bodhicitta, that's comprehensive thing. Well, technically I think the other way is it's the six perfections, practicing the six perfections. I'm going to do this evening, I'm going to do the outline of how to practice those. It's just another way of formulating it. So in Shantideva's text, he starts out by saying, here I will explain how to engage in the vows of the Buddha's sons, how to keep the Bodhisattva vows. But then what he does is he writes 6 chapters, one on each of the 6 perfections. With some preliminary material as well, which I'll just mention in a moment. But mainly it's the 6 perfections. And then also these 4 ways of benefiting trainees. So your training, through which you become enlightened, is the 6 perfections, if you like. So that is, although many of them are actually practices which are benefiting sentient beings, but as far as your training is concerned, the purpose is for you to become enlightened. But then the 4 ways of benefiting trainees are the things that you do while you're on the path, which are, directed towards others. This is a technical distinction, if you like, because they will benefit you as well. Both will benefit yourself and others, but the 6 perfections it's kind of the purpose, if you like, is for your training, and then the 4 ways of benefiting trainees, the purpose is directly benefiting others. But obviously both do both. So as I say, they are equivalent. The 2 are equivalent. If you're doing one, you're doing the other. But you can approach it through, if you like, learning the outlines and kind of, making that the framework within which you practice. Or you can approach it through the vows. Of course, most of the 46 secondary vows are, they are sets of vows to do with each of the 6 perfections. So the relationship's very clear, if you like. It really just, in a way, just different outlines, different ways of kind of presenting all the bits of the puzzle. But I think it's good to kind of know both, and I find the 6 perfections is a very helpful way to think about it. And of course, the Shantideva text is a wonderful sort of, it is the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. I want to be a Bodhisattva. Here's the manual. It is the handbook of how to do it. So it is. I think it's the supreme commentary, the supreme sort of root text on bodhicitta. Technically, the root text is the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, but if you try and make that your day-to-day guidebook, you might find you struggle a bit. It's not that simple to sort of translate that into actual practice. But Shantideva is a very, very practical. Really. So I think he has just betrays such a good understanding of human nature, what we're really like, the things that we will struggle with, the things that will work for us, the things we need to bear in mind, how to actually, work with our mind in an effective way. So I do absolutely recommend, indispensable, I think, if we want to be serious about practicing this spiritual path, is to get to know that book. There are many other wonderful sort of texts, but I think all of the Tibetan tradition, all of the Lamrim texts really kind of they flow from that the Shantideva root text. So it is the supreme source of this wisdom of how to practice. But of course, the essence of refined gold is another beautiful and much shorter version. So we'll come back to that. How to train in the 6 perfections. Yeah. So we did quite a short section there, a few pages. And we'll have a look at these outlines and the root verses, which are so beautiful. I think the Tsongkhapa's poetry. Find a way to kick this book open. Okay, so the 6 perfections are transcending perfection of generosity, transcending perfection of moral discipline, the transcending perfection of patience, transcending perfection of joyous effort or enthusiasm or perseverance. Geshe Sopa said he liked diligence. That's quite a good one. Diligence. Transcending perfection of meditative concentration. Actually, yeah, just concentration. Mainly meditative concentration, but I guess any kind of concentration. And the transcending perfection of wisdom. Okay, those 6. So I'm just going to, because we don't have much time, I'm going to briefly go through the outlines of those. How to train in the perfection of generosity. So usually this is explained, these are all kind of the outlines are all just lists that you can learn, okay? And if you learn the lists and you've heard some commentary, then it helps you to remember what it's really all about. So here there's a list of four types of generosity, the 4 types of giving. So that's helpful to know, and obviously there's also different objects. There are three main objects of giving as well. Yeah, perhaps helpful to explain that first, actually, because what you give might be slightly different in the 3 different cases. So these are the 3 fields of giving. The field of suffering, those who have great needs. So these are, you could give to anybody, right? Obviously, usually a sentient being, not only a sentient being actually, as I'll explain in a moment, but usually, but if it is someone who is suffering or in difficulties or in great need, then it's greater positive effect from doing that, more greater kind of positive karma, greater merit from giving to those who are suffering. Then the field of benefit is those who are closely related to you. So like your family, friends, people who you have a strong karmic relationship with, because you have that relationship to them, then you are able to benefit them more effectively than people you don't have any connection with. Field of benefit. And then the third one is the field of merit. So this is holy beings and also holy objects. So you can offer not only to gurus or lamas or sangha, monks, or anybody who has high realizations, bodhisattvas, to the Buddhas. You can also offer, make offerings to temples or stupas or holy objects, and there the merit is greater because of the power of the object, the positive qualities of the object. So yeah, I used to have a bit of difficulty with this. Why do we make offerings to the Buddhas? They don't need it. Well, they don't. They absolutely don't need it. So how does it benefit? It benefits us, of course. Why does it benefit us to give to the Buddhas? I think it's much more obvious if it's it's a living guru. It's like, you say, well, yeah, of course, he's very enlightened, he doesn't need my offering, but if the person is there, it's like Dagre Rinpoche or Lama Zopa or his owners, and you make an offering to them, it's very intuitive, isn't it? That's a good thing to do. It's kind of making a good connection. Maybe it's a bit more difficult with the Buddhas because we kind of tend to think that they're not really there. We tend to think, well, it's just a statue, or really it's just a painting, but they are really there. And it's through making offerings, actually, one of the main ways that we enhance the connection to them, that we begin to experience the fact that they are there, that it's that it's not just a painting or a visualized image, but that painting or that visualized image actually in technical terms, it's a valid base of imputation for the term Buddha. Okay, the Buddha is actually manifesting through that form. Even when it's your own visualized image, this is very clear from Lama Yeshe. Lama Yeshe says this. Your visualized image is a valid basis to impute Buddha onto. It is the Buddha. And the same with the painting and the statue. If we understand it in terms of how emptiness works and how dependent arising works, the reality of the Buddha or the Guru arises from making an imputation of Buddha or Guru onto a valid base. It's very clear those images, that although there's no gross physical body there, but there is a form, a Buddha form, and you impute onto it Buddha, then it's Buddha. Okay, as long as it's a valid base for that imputation. If you impute Buddha onto a brick, well, it might not be. So that's not true. But if you impute it onto an authentic image or into your own visualized image that's been visualized with faith, then it is. So I think as that understanding begins to develop and as we begin to have more of an experience of it, the practice of offering becomes more and more meaningful. We really feel, giving somebody to somebody you have a relationship with this being, whether it's your Yidam, your meditational deity, or Shakyamuni Buddha, or the Lama visualized as a Buddha, however you think of it. But you are actually interacting with them. You're actually giving them something. So the mandala offering, for instance, can be very powerful. Even though it's a visualized offering to a visualized being, it has a tremendously powerful effect on your mind. if you can develop that faith that that is a genuine, you are making a real offering. So making offerings, to the holy objects is absolutely part of the perfection of generosity. Then, with regard to ordinary sentient beings, there are four kinds of types of giving that are important, that are mentioned. So, giving material things, very obvious. Someone is in poverty or is hungry. Give them food or clothing or money, whatever they need. It's the most obvious one. Giving fearlessness, very important. So if people are, experiencing insecurity or fear, or they're in danger, you protect them. And so it mentions here giving protection to those oppressed by the wrath of kings, soldiers, etc., and to those frightened by sentient forces such as ghosts, demons, wild animals, snakes, and so forth, and to those frightened by inanimate objects like burning, crushing, drowning, suffocation, etc. Okay. So that's giving fearlessness, or giving protection. Very powerful, very, sublime form of giving, actually. It could be just, people suffering from, like, mental disturbance, irrational fears. Might not be anything really happening, but if you can, reassure them, make them feel safe, then that's giving the fearlessness. Okay. Giving love. I think it's incredibly important. So many people, I think, in our materially wealthy society are really destitute of, they don't experience being loved, they don't experience being cared about, they don't experience, it's so powerful. It doesn't have to be, somebody that you're in a relationship with or a family member. It's really just kindness, I guess. Just showing that you are you connect with somebody's humanity, I think, isn't it? It's, you respond to them in a way that you're actually listening to what's going on with them, who they are, and responding to that rather than in some kind of mechanical way. So different when somebody's showing kindness and actually being interested in who you are and what's going on with you, what you're experiencing. So these days people are in too much of a hurry, aren't they? So it doesn't happen very much. To a lot of people, they just... And it can make such a difference to someone who is, going through a really hard time. Giving love, loving kindness. And then the fourth one, actually the most important of the four, is giving the Dharma. So this can be through teaching. It could be, and obviously we have to be careful with, we're not advised to go out, and we certainly shouldn't be ever push it onto people. But if it can benefit, if somebody is in a sort of place where they can be receptive to it, then to tell them about it and, invite them to come to the Dhamma Center, it's something they can benefit. It's a huge gift. So we should try to share it with people as long as we are clear that it's, from their side they're receptive and they're interested. It's very unskillful to try and persuade people if they're otherwise disposed. But it is an important thing. So again, I think in terms of teaching, I think it's very important here because we can get rather over what's the word? I'm not. I don't mean it's not about false humility. I don't mean that, but overcautious about it, thinking, well, I'm not ready to teach. I don't know enough. So I'm not talking about getting up and sitting on a throne or anything, but I'm talking about where you have got some information that's going to be helpful to somebody. Don't sit on it thinking, well, I'm too humble to say anything. If you think it can be of benefit, then you can say it, and it's like just sharing with each other, supporting each other. If you've got something, obviously we do that, but I think it is possible to fall into just a sort of a bit much of a black and white. Oh, well, this person's a teacher, I'm not. It's not really like that. There's like all different levels and gradations. We all have some knowledge. We all have enough knowledge that can benefit people who have a bit less, So sharing our Dharma understanding with others is an important part of the practice. Okay. Generosity. So there's those three objects, and 4 types of giving. It's the essence of it. The perfection of generosity is the magic gem to fulfill the hopes of the world, the best tool with which to cut the knot of miserliness constricting the heart. The Bodhisattva's deed giving birth to the unfailing powers of the spirit, the foundation of beneficial reputation. Knowing this, the wise rely upon the practice of giving their body, possessions and merits. Right. Just mention that giving your body, of course, that's a quite an advanced practice. It is a practice of the Bodhisattvas, and there are lots of stories about that. The Buddha's, former lives and things. One story that I rather like the way it was described in the book that I read. That the Buddha, in one of his, as a previous lives as a Bodhisattva, he was walking through the forest and he came upon a hungry tigress who was starving, and she was trying to feed her cubs and she couldn't feed them. She couldn't give them any milk because she herself was starving. So the Buddha fed the tigress with his blood until she was strong enough to eat him, and then got eaten. And the way it was described in this book was that Ashvaghosha, who was a great sort of Buddhist poet and a teacher in the early sort of years of the Mahayana Dharma, he'd read about this and he was in the forest one day and exactly the same thing happened, and he said he found it quite difficult, and this increased his admiration for the Buddha. But we're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to do that kind of thing, right? This is only it actually is a fault to try to do things like that when we're not ready to do them. We shouldn't, try to practice those extraordinary acts of sort of bodhisattva selflessness when we don't have enough realizations to be able to do them. It's harmful. We need to look after our body and mind. The most important thing for us at this level is to make sure that we have, the conditions that we can practice. So we can aspire to one day do that. There's a nice story actually about, when it talks about miserliness, a nice story about that Lama Zopa told about that. There's one monk who suffered from miserliness, and he trained himself by practicing to give an object from one hand to the other. He did this for many months just to try and train his mind in the thought of giving, because he couldn't actually give it to anybody else, but he could give it from his left hand to his right hand. So he practiced at our own level, whatever level we're at. We train, if this is our sort of characteristic, rather than just sort of feeling very bad about it, think, well, this is the level that I'm at the moment. Well, okay, well, if that's all I can do, I'll do that, And then slowly it becomes greater. Our ability to give becomes greater. So Shantideva.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you could have thank yourself very profusely. That's very kind of you, David. Because of course that is also part of it. And another part of the generosity that I didn't mention is actually receiving things. So we should accept things that are offered to us graciously rather than refusing them. So it says in the Bodhisattva vows, if we think that the person can't afford to give us that, then we should say no, thank you. But generally, we shouldn't refuse things that are offered to us. That's part of the practice of generosity, because you are then enabling them to gain merit by giving. Okay. So that's generosity. Moral discipline, again, breaks down into 3 types.
Can I just ask
Yeah.
see if I'm reading this right? At the end of that first paragraph on 154,
Yeah. A different page in this one, of course, but...
okay, it's the 14th.
Oh, yeah, no, it is the same one,
The
yeah.
14th
Yeah.
response.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure I'm reading this right.
Ah, yes.
It is basically a state of mind.
Correct.
It seems to be, well, on
Correct.
one level, it seems to be letting us off the hook.
Yeah.
It's the attitude. I think it seems to me it's emphasising the attitude of generosity rather than.
That's absolutely right. So, somebody who has a lot of money would be able to physically give more than somebody who hasn't. It doesn't mean that they have more perfection of generosity. It is the attitude, the willingness, the widow's mite story, isn't it? In the Bible, there's the very, very poor woman who gave her last penny was more generous than the wealthy person who gave a lot of money but still had plenty left for himself. That's what it's really saying. So Shantideva says, if the perfection of generosity was the external thing of relieving all the poverty in the world, no one would ever complete it. The Buddha hasn't got it if he hasn't done that. But the Buddha has got the perfection of generosity because he would give, there's no situation where he wouldn't give whatever was needed, whatever was possible. So yes, it is. It's a state of mind, and you can practice it, in a solitary retreat in a cave, just as well as you can practice it in a city. Both are equally valid. If you're physically giving things with a real genuine motivation, then of course that's just as valid as the meditation and the other way about. So all of these are mental practices, really, in essence. But of course, yes, we do. Where it's appropriate and where we can, we give material things. And in terms of moral discipline, yes, we do physically refrain from certain actions and do other types of actions. But the essence of it is the motivation, the mind, state of mind. All of them are like that, correct. So moral discipline, again, 3 types of moral discipline. Called the moral discipline of restraint, which is the one we hear most about. Okay, the things that we're not supposed to do. Abstaining from basically the 10 non-virtuous actions. One way to look at it. Another way to look at it is the 3 sets of vows. Okay, so the pratimoksha vows, which are. Is there somebody out there?
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's your phone. All right. Right. So the 3 sets of vows are pratimoksha vows, bodhisattva vows, and tantric vows. And the difference is in terms of the motivation. So pratimoksha vows, there are different types of those. So the 5 lay precepts are pratimoksha vows. But also the monks' vows, the novice monks' vows, and the fully ordained monks' vows or nuns' vows, they are also pratimoksha vows because the motivation for those is they're the basis for individual liberation, for attaining nirvana. They're not Mahayana vows. That doesn't mean that Mahayana practitioners don't observe the vows. They do, obviously. But because as a Mahayana practitioner, you have to practice renunciation. You have to have that base level of motivation, which is the same as the Hinayana. But then on top of that, you have the Mahayana motivation. So on top of the Pratimoksha vows, you have the Bodhisattva vows. Okay. And then if you're a tantric practitioner, although the motivation for Tantra is also still bodhicitta, but there is a special form of bodhicitta, which is the tantric, the Vajrayana motivation, which is not just to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, but to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings as quickly as possible, out of compassion, not out of wanting to take a shortcut, can't be bothered with practicing for 3 countless aeons, I'm going to take the quick path. No, because you cannot bear them to suffer a moment longer than necessary, therefore you want to attain enlightenment in the quickest possible time. That's a special bodhicitta motivation, and the tantric vows are the vows that you take that are related to that motivation. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about the tantric vows because I'm not allowed to, since some of you haven't received initiation. But the bodhisattva vows we've talked about, the pratimoksha vows, we know about those. So that's the moral discipline of restraint. Vows, by the way, are things that one promises not to do. Commitments are things that one promises to do. So in Tantra, there are both vows and commitments, as well commitments that you do. And in terms of the Mahayana practice, the great scope practice, you could say, the 6 perfections are the commitments, and the bodhisattva vows are the vows of things you refrain from. But it's a verbal difference. It's like you refrain from not doing certain things. Often you find. So here, the restraint is giving up harmful things. Okay, that's the moral discipline of restraint. The moral discipline of benefiting others, okay, was obviously like the positive things that you do to benefit others. And what is that? The 4 types of giving. The 4 types of giving that we just talked about. So moral discipline includes generosity. They all include each other, actually, if you go into it deeply enough. And then the third one is the moral discipline of gathering virtue, or gathering virtuous dharma, it's explained, which means accumulating merit. Yeah, so things like making offerings, the spiritual practices that create positive karma. Okay, so again, that's in the generosity as well. So he says, one must attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. In order to do so, one should maintain an attitude having the qualities of mindfulness, mental alertness, conscientiousness, humility, modesty, and so forth. So those are qualities that are related to moral discipline. And in Shantideva's text, the 4th chapter is on conscientiousness, which is basically having a strong determination to keep the vows at all times, if you like. The 5th chapter is the chapter on moral discipline, but it's entitled Practicing Mindfulness and Discriminating Alertness, which is translated here mental alertness. So these 2 mental factors, the mental factor of mindfulness and the mental factor of alertness, are you may recognize those from the teachings on concentration, particularly in Geshe-Tashi's teaching. He talks about vigilance, I think, as the translation of the same term as alertness. So mindfulness is keeping, in this context, it's keeping the vows in mind, and alertness is noticing when that mindfulness is decreasing and bringing it back up to scratch again. Okay, so you need these 2 qualities in order to be able to practice moral discipline. Can't practice it if we're not mindful. Yeah. So, in other words, it's a bit different from the sort of usual, perhaps Christian way of talking about it, that you know, if you break your vow, then you're a sinner. You know, you've sinned, you've done something wrong. It's like we don't initially have the ability to keep the vows purely because we don't have perfect mindfulness. Without perfect mindfulness, we're bound to slip up. You know, our attention will wander, and we will, oh dear, you know, as long as we notice, you know, and do something about it, it's okay. It's a training that we gradually get better at it. It's not something that from this moment onwards you must never break any of these vows. It isn't like that because that's not possible. We just don't have that ability. But we do have the ability to progressively train in mindfulness and get more and more familiar with them, and that with time, you know, immediately we notice, you know, something, and we hold back and we don't break the vow. Lama Artisha was very famous for his practice of moral discipline. He said he never in his life broke any of his pratimoksha vows, including the monks' vows, and there were 253 monks' vows. He never broke any of those. Occasionally he would break one of his bodhisattva vows. And he said the breaches of the tantric vows were like rain pattering down. More difficult to keep the higher vows. Need a higher level of mindfulness to keep the vows of the higher levels.
The man who always jump off his horse
Yes.
as soon as he realised he.
Yeah. If he slipped up, if he'd broken a vow, he would stop, jump off the horse, and prostrate and purify the broken vow, and then get back on the horse again. Which is a good metaphor for all of us.
Stop on the motorway.
Yeah. If you fall off, you know, to purify you, get back on the horse. Ethical discipline is water to clean away the stains of evil, moonlight to cool the heat of delusion. That's beautiful, isn't it? Radiance towering like a mountain in the midst of sentient beings. So it has great power. It's a very, you know, it's a powerful quality. The force peacefully to unite mankind. Knowing this, spiritual practitioners guard it as they would their very eyes. So incredibly important. Our practice is just, all our efforts are wasted if we don't practice moral discipline. It's, you know, like it's just like having a beautiful vase full of some precious substance and then smashing a hole in it. Perfection of patience. Okay. So again, there's three kinds of patience. The patience of, first one is the patience of voluntarily enduring one's own suffering. Okay, this is very important. It's going to happen anyway. So there's no point in getting steamed up about it. Right? Enduring suffering patiently, accepting the suffering, which is the product of our own past karmic actions. So to accept it, that's okay that this is happening to me. It's fine, you know. It's very important, and because as soon as we do that, as soon as we accept it, as soon as we say, well, I've created the karma, so I'm experiencing the result, then first of all, that karma is gone. But if we react against it and get furious, then it becomes endless. We're just creating more. Secondly, if we accept it patiently, it is actually, that itself is creating a positive karma. Yeah, so we're just reversing it. So there's, with these teachings, especially I think this one, patience, it's so helpful to have lots and lots of different examples and different thoughts that kind of the mind training teachings are full of these, like just thinking about in a different way, so that our habitual attitude, which is always just to react, you know, whatever happens, that shouldn't have happened to me. I did not deserve that. It's unfair. You know, we get steamed up. And actually, all we're doing is perpetuating it. But there are different ways to think about it. It's that we can start to feel happy that I'm experiencing this, that I'm neutralizing this past karma. Yes, David?
Can I clarify? Is this saying, amongst other things, that we should be patient with our own impatience?
Yes, that is also true. Yeah, we should acknowledge that we cannot just turn it off like a tap. It's a habit that has taken lifetimes to acquire, and it will take a little bit of time and training to overcome it. Yeah, of course, we can get furious with our own impatience, and where does that get us? Yeah, that's right. So the fact that, you know, if I am a bit a bit irritable and ill-tempered, well, that's that's a misfortune, and I've created the karmic cause. The reason why I'm like that is because of the way that I've acted in the past, isn't it? So I should patiently accept it, paradoxically. So there are extensive teachings on the benefits of suffering, right? Now, it's kind of paradoxical because we're trying to escape from suffering. Of course we are. But since it is going to happen, you know, for some time to come, since we have not become enlightened, we haven't purified all of our past negative karma, we are going to be experiencing suffering. It's inevitable for quite a while. We might as well have a positive attitude towards it. So the third Dalai Lama says, when one experiences pain and suffering because of karma done to oneself by another, negative attitudes like pride, arrogance, and so forth are dispelled. If you experience it patiently, that your negative attitudes, such as pride, arrogance, and so forth, are dispelled, and the mind which renounces samsara is strengthened. So Ribur Rinpoche, who was a very great Lama, and he was a reincarnated Lama. So in his early life, he was sort of revered, and he came after his training. He came back to his home monastery, and he was treated as this great exalted being. Then the Chinese came and invaded, and his whole situation changed. And he said he was very glad because we realized that when he was this high Lama, he was in great danger of falling into pride and complacency. But when the Chinese came, his practice was right back there again, because there was no possibility of falling into feeling proud or becoming lazy. It was just like the situation forced him to practice bodhicitta. So he said, he was very glad that it happened. It might sound a bit weird, but actually it's very, very skillful thinking, So the things that we normally get terribly frustrated, we could think, well, this is good. And this is one of the main, outlines in the mind training practice, turning negative experiences into the path. Very skillful, so that whatever happens to us, we can be glad. Actually, well, this is a great opportunity to practice, and it works. You can actually, over time, become more able to do this. So this paragraph, quite a long paragraph here about different ways of having a positive take on suffering happening to you, because if we can do that, if we can accept it willingly, then it can do us good. Practice of voluntarily enduring one's own suffering, the patience of voluntarily enduring one's own suffering. They're a bit of tongue twisters, these, aren't they? The second kind is the patience of non-retaliation. So that is simply, if someone hits you, you don't hit back. Either physically or verbally or mentally. Yeah. So that obviously, you definitely don't want to return physical violence with physical violence, or verbal accusations. it's a very powerful, very good to just not react in the way that we do. That's quite a difficult training for us. You know, it's so automatic, isn't it, to just snap back. But I think, especially with patience, you know, rather than beating ourselves up if we're not successful, if we do get a bit angry, to really recognize how difficult it is the most powerful negative mind is anger. And so to win even a tiny victory against it, you know, to one time when somebody said something nasty to you and you managed to zip your lip, you should be really, you know, really rejoice and celebrate that and pat yourself on the back. Well done, because it's the most difficult. So each of these 6 perfections, I always feel when I'm talking about any of them that this one is the most important, and they are all the most important in different ways. Okay, and the way in which patience is the most important of the 6 is that anger is our biggest enemy. So we can't succeed if we don't conquer anger. We cannot succeed on the spiritual path. And it is, but if we do, because it's the most difficult, it's the hardest, then we will be able to succeed. Yeah, if we can crack this one, we can crack the rest. So in that way, you know, overcoming anger is it's a kind of litmus test of whether we're going to be able to do the rest of the path. It's quite common, actually, for people to have lots of other good qualities, but they can't control their anger, and you know, it's going to. The negative effects of anger are very, very strong, very powerful. You know, it is the delusion which will take us to the hell realms if we don't get it under control. So, in a way, you know, this is a real touchstone. This is if we can make significant progress with the practice of patience, that's really sort of very, very fundamental. So patience of non-retaliation. Then the third kind is called the patience of definitely thinking about Dharma. What this means is that, you know, just through these kind of mind training techniques we can make quite a bit of progress, but we can't get rid of it. We can't get rid of anger completely without the realization of emptiness, because it is through that understanding, we only through understanding emptiness we see that it's a completely invalid, it's not a valid thought, the anger. Yeah. So the example that's given is if somebody hits you with a club, you know, you blame the person, but really you should blame the delusion, the anger that's caused them to do that. Because blaming the person is as mistaken as blaming the club. The club's only hit you because the person has, you know, has made that happen. They've only done that because their delusion has caused them to act in that way. They are just as much, you know, a tool in the hands of that delusion, if you like. They're just the real. You should be directing your anger towards the delusion, and therefore, Shantideva actually advises us to get angry with our delusions. To blame. Oh, that's from the Lama-Chirpa Puja, isn't it? Yes. We seek your blessings to Venerable Gurus to blame, begrudge and destroy the monstrous demon of selfishness. What does Shantideva say? There's a similar quote from there about the object that we can... So this isn't to say, even technically speaking, even that anger is a delusion. You know, we can be angry with our delusions. But for the time being, he says that's good. If we're going to be angry with anything, be angry at delusions. So this is seeing, you know, I think it's actually very helpful in terms of understanding what emptiness is all about. You know, if you are angry with someone, if you blame someone, if you think, you know, then what are you blaming? You're blaming the I, the self, that doesn't exist. You're blaming that person's self. You're not blaming their body or their mind. You're blaming the person, the inherently existing person. If you don't see the person as existing inherently as something independent and separate from the body and mind, the blame disappears, the anger disappears. Right? I don't know how, I mean, you get a little bit of that. So that's the most powerful form of patience. Definitely, when it says patience of definitely thinking about Dharma, it means thinking about emptiness specifically. If we see the situation in terms of emptiness, we will never be angry. Right? Yeah. Good motivation for studying emptiness. Number 4, here it's called joyous perseverance, sometimes often called joyous effort, enthusiasm, energy, diligence, enthusiastic perseverance, etc., etc. Okay. So again, this is, in what way is this the most important one? Venerable Rabina, when we had, many years ago, over the course of a year, we had a weekend teachings on the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And Geshe Tashi taught the first 4 chapters, and then the rest of the chapters were taught by different people. I think Dechen Rochard taught the moral discipline chapter. Andy Wistrike taught patience. Rabina Courtin taught enthusiastic perseverance or joyous effort. You can understand why I got her for that one. And she said, this is the one that you should concentrate on, because if you focus on increasing this, the effort, then everything else depends on that in a way. If you're not putting effort in, none of the others are going to really happen. But if you're putting in the effort, they'll all happen, as long as the effort is not in the wrong direction. But so she said, this is the one we should kind of in a way think about most. We should give our attention to. If we're not practicing sort of with enough energy and with enough commitment and effort, then we're not going to get anywhere. So that's where we need to put our, yeah. So again, the outlines. Here it mentions 3 types, but the outline that I know there's 4, which are quite similar to these. The 4 types that I am familiar with is the joyous effort of forcefulness, is like putting a lot of energy into the practice now. So like, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to really kind of work on my meditation today. I'm going to not just kind of sit there and wait for the meditation to end, but I'm going to really work at this, whatever it is I'm practicing. Okay. So that's like, putting a lot of energy in the moment. The second one is the joyous effort of firmness, maintaining it, over a long period of time. Not just having a burst of 3 weeks and then don't do anything for 3 months, which is a common form of we have a great surge of enthusiasm and it lasts for a certain amount of time and that sort of fades away until something else inspires us to have another surge of enthusiasm. But no, but to keep it going day after day after day, year after year after year. Year after year, in a way, more important, I think. But it's like if we occasionally have a day when we've slipped and pull ourselves back up again, well, okay. But it's more about maintaining a reasonably consistent level of practice month by month, year by year, and that takes quite a long time usually to for that to happen. Usually at the beginning it's a bit more kind of haphazard, isn't it? It goes up and down a lot, but over time it becomes more if one keeps working at it. And one of the most difficult things, I think, is to maintain that motivation and the enthusiasm and the kind of the sharpness. Like, a lot of people are, very enthusiastic about the Dharma for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, and then it's sort of, they drift away. That happens to the majority of people, I think. Possibly, I don't know. It's difficult to say, but it happens to a lot of people. And if you can keep it going after that initial sort of honeymoon period of a couple of years or 3 years, but if you can really sort of take to heart, no, this is too important, because anything that we're very familiar with starts to sort of fade into the background, doesn't it? We get excited, enthusiastic about something that's new, novelty. The mind thrives on novelty. Anything that's familiar tends to just sort of, we start to take it for granted. So we have to put effort into maintaining that enthusiasm in whatever way works for us. And sometimes it might be, that, I've gone a bit stale. I should go and get some teachings, go to hear some teacher that inspires me, or go on a retreat or whatever, or maybe just might need a rest, One of the things I'm going to mention in a moment, actually, about rest, but it is important. So that's very important. Firmness, keep going. The third one is called the joyous effort of strong armour. Here he mentions this armour-like perseverance, which does not abandon difficult practices for any reason whatsoever. Never give up. That's a very well-known quote from His Holiness, isn't it? There's a poster about it. Never give up, never give up, never give up on peace, he says. Never give up on your Dharma practice. So, whilst we need to take to heart the advice that we shouldn't try to practice what's beyond us, but if we are, we have our practice and we're confronted with a difficult situation, we shouldn't think, oh, this situation is so difficult, I won't be able to do it. Now we confront the difficulty. If that is what's on our path, that's what we are presented with. Don't think, I can't do this. Keep going. Keep doing it.
I think.
Yeah.
I notice that very strongly, and I suspect I'm not alone.
Oh, you're certainly not alone.
No, I think it's in our culture.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is.
No, we can't do that.
Yeah. I don't think it's just Western culture, though. I think it's a human sort of thing. Oh, that's too difficult. I'm not going to be able to do it. So although we've made a commitment to do something and maintain this practice, and we encounter a difficulty and we think, oh, no, I'll never be able to do that. And then we give up, we quit ourselves. And it's a shame, because usually it's not true.
What I'm getting at is, I think it's not just, oh, I'll give up. It's that I think that I am conscious that if I think I can do that, I'm being arrogant.
Yes, very true. That's also true. That's also one to watch out for.
Gotten exaggerated.
Yeah.
And we're discouraged from having that exaggerated idea of our own ability.
Yeah, well, we shouldn't have an exaggerated idea of our own, but we also shouldn't have the opposite. We also shouldn't have the opposite. Yeah. And so there are two opposite mental qualities: self-confidence and self-importance. I'm somebody really special. No, that's not helpful. But, oh, I'm so small and I could never do that. That's also not helpful. So we should have that confidence that there isn't anything we can't do if we set about it methodically and we keep a balanced attitude, and we understand that we need to train to develop these qualities. We may not have the full measure of those qualities right now, so we should avoid rushing in where angels fear to tread, overstepping our limits. But that is only through experience and wisdom that we do get that right judgment, and we do. It's much more common that we fall into thinking too small, actually, and minimizing our potential and our ability. We shouldn't do that. Very important if we're on the Mahayana path. As a bodhisattva, we should have a positive view of our own potential and our own ability. And the fourth one is called the joyous effort of never being satisfied, or the joyous effort of non-complacency. So what this means is, that when we've done some quite good work and we've made some real progress, that's great. You don't need to do any more. I've arrived. No, you haven't. So resting on our laurels, that's a great temptation to think, it happens. It happened to me over and over again. When I've and it does reinforce the point earlier about the suffering, that when things are difficult, I think, oh, I really need to work on my Dharma practice. When things are going smoothly and well, oh yeah, I can just kind of cruise along. So never to think that. So if you've achieved something, think that's great. Sort of. Just you can sort of pause there for a moment and rejoice and be happy about it and have a rest for if you've been working hard. But then we need to set our sights on the next goal. Where do we go from it with? If I have achieved something, I've attained a certain level of wisdom or whatever realization, then based on that I can go higher, I can move beyond. So we never come to the point where we think, I've done enough, I'm retiring now from Dharma practice. I'll spend the rest of my life chilling out. It's good to chill out, it's good to have rest though. So this is also included in the perfection of perseverance, or effort actually, really. There are four so-called four powers which help us in our practice of effort. And they are aspiration. So we've talked about that a lot, about aspiration, haven't we? So this is connected with not having too small a view. That, we really are setting out to do something tremendous, and we can do it. We have to have that high aspiration, and that inspires us. Okay, it's got to be balanced. I'm not going to get there tomorrow. It might take me the rest of this lifetime. It might take me the next lifetime as well, but I'm determined to get there. Aspiration. Steadfastness, we never sort of just quit on ourselves and think, oh, it's too hard, I'm giving up, I'll go and do something else. Joy, so we should practice joyfully. Yeah, we should take delight in our practice and in our achievement. And connected with that is rest. When we start to get stale and it starts to just, our mind starts to flag and we start to feel weary, then we have to look after ourselves and rest. Be kind to ourselves as well. Lama Yeshe was very strong on that. So don't, Lama Yeshe, be gentle, be kind with yourself. So even though it is kind of, it is like physical training, isn't it? You do sort of stretch yourself a little bit, but if you overdo it, it's really counterproductive. If we push ourselves too hard, we'll just fall down again. So we need to have that balance between pushing ourselves a little bit beyond our comfort zone, but then also taking care of ourselves when that's needed as well. Okay. Thank you very much, David. Good night. So the last two, there's a separate section on the joint practice of the last two. So although this is going to be very, very condensed version, don't worry, because we will do some more next time. And on that, I did put on the email today that we'll try to do a class on Monday week, because that's when people said they would be free. But of course there is a class here, so I'm going to have to come up with another venue. So hopefully I'll manage to do that somewhere else that we can do it, because otherwise I think one more class isn't quite enough to wrap things up in in a good way. I mean, I can do it if we can't do the class on Monday week, but I think several people said they could come on that night. So I've said I'm willing to do it if we can find a suitable place to do it. So I will try and sort that out. Okay, so just very quickly on concentration and wisdom, then there will be more on that next time. Concentration, so the way in which concentration is the most important is that the power of any of the other practices depends on concentration. So if we have good concentration, all our other practices are much more powerful. Yeah. Without good concentration, they don't really do very much. So it's very important to train. And this can be a bit of a stumbling block for people who think, well, I've tried and I'm getting nowhere. Really, nothing is happening. I don't think I can do Dharma because it's too difficult, because I'm never going to be able to develop meditative concentration. So I think what's helpful to understand, what is the factor that makes it possible to develop concentration? And that is effort. If we put in a lot of effort in our practice, and not necessarily, in effort into specifically training in concentration, but if, for instance, we say, okay, well, I'm going to do, purification practice, I'm going to do prostrations every day. We do that for a while. Pretty soon you'll find your concentration is better. Yeah. So whatever practice you do, if you put effort into it, it will. If it is a Dharma practice, obviously if you're putting effort into something negative, it's not going to help. But if you're putting effort into positive actions, Dharma, then, and it could be just helping in the center, but it will contribute. If you're putting effort and commitment into your Dharma practice, it will result in, it will be easier to develop concentration. Okay. Meditative concentration is the king to rule the mind. When stabilized, it sits like a mountain. When directed, it can enter all virtuous meditations. It leads to every physical and mental joy. Knowing this, great yogis always rely on it. The destroyer of the enemy, mental wandering. Great stuff, isn't it? This poetry. So that's pretty clear. It's pretty. We all know. We all kind of. Wouldn't it be nice to have that? And it does take a lot of work to get there. It doesn't come easily. But if we do develop real meditative concentration, everything is there for the asking. It is an extraordinarily powerful thing. And without it, we're really kind of limited in what we can do. Yes, we can do, the method practices. We can practice love and compassion and generosity and moral discipline and so on. We can do those, even though, as long as we've got a certain amount of mindfulness, we don't have to have deep concentration. But without it, like so much of the whole sort of practice of Dharma is closed to us. You can't do tantric practice without concentration. It's just meaningless. So it's incredibly important, and it comes with laying those foundations. Without patience, we won't be able to develop it, because if we kind of continually kind of falling victim to anger, it will just disrupt the concentration. It will, you can't. It takes hours and hours and hours, doesn't it, before you can meditate calmly after you've had a real burst of anger. So that's no good. Moral discipline. If our moral discipline is shaky, our concentration won't be any good. So these first four, really, it's like the foundation. We need to work on these, and then the concentration is kind of built upon that foundation, and it will start to come naturally. Once we have those four, if you like, more practical ones, So more like the outer practices, aren't they? They're not all outer. Of course, there's a lot of them is inner practice, but our outer practice, our physical and verbal actions, very much are to do with generosity, moral discipline, patience, effort. So there we can lay the foundations. We don't have to have perfect concentration to be able to do those, but if we do those with consistently over time, the concentration will start to come. Perfection of wisdom, how is that the most important one? It is said to be that all the others are for the sake, all the other practices are for the sake of wisdom. Why is that? Because it is the practice of wisdom, meditating on ultimate reality, on emptiness, that actually destroys the delusions, that actually takes us to enlightenment. Is the actual cause of enlightenment is a practice of wisdom. Okay, so all the others are kind of like the container, maybe, without all of those method practices. The first 5 are all on the side of method. And then the 6th one is the wisdom side. So these are like the 2 wings of the bird, we need both. So all of the method practices are necessary, but once you have those, we've kind of created the bodhicitta, the motivation, and all the method practices. But how do we actually become enlightened? What does a bodhisattva do once they have kind of got that pure motivation, they've got that spontaneous bodhicitta? What do they do in order to attain enlightenment? They meditate on emptiness. That is how we get enlightened. That's why that is the most essential one. Okay. So we'll talk more about, obviously, next week. We have the 4 ways of benefiting trainees, and we have combining samadhi and wisdom, practicing concentration and wisdom together. So we'll talk about that next time. Okay. Any questions? So shall we just finish with a few minutes meditation? So take a moment to settle the mind and body. Allow the body to relax. And follow the breathing for a couple of minutes to focus the mind. And bring to mind whatever understanding you have of the motivation of bodhicitta. This is a way of thinking about the purpose of my existence. Why am I here? I am here to bring happiness to others, to free others from suffering. This is the highest purpose that I can choose for my life. And to do so, to succeed in that purpose, I need to develop my mind to the highest level. And so therefore, I will follow the path to enlightenment. I will make it my goal to achieve full enlightenment. So this is not an arrogant thing. Everyone has the potential to attain enlightenment. Everyone has Buddha nature. So it's not arrogant to think, I can do this, to make that choice. This is the wisest and best thing that we can do. So with the example of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha in front of us, we set that as our destination. However long it takes, step by step, I will travel this path to the end. And so even if I'm not naturally a very generous person, I will train my mind in generosity. Learn the teachings on generosity, study the vows that explain how to practice it. Meditate on the advantages of generosity. Step by step, day by day, this quality will grow. Generosity is the basis of the Bodhisattva path. The wish to give happiness to others and free them from suffering. Also, if this is our wish, we need to train in refraining from harmful actions and practicing beneficial ones. So we need to train in moral discipline. Again, we need to learn the vows, both the Pratimoksha and Bodhisattva vows. And generate a strong determination to keep the vows as best we can, knowing from time to time we may slip up, and then we need to purify, get back on the horse, and slowly our practice will become purer and purer. Absolutely essential to train in the practice of patience. At the moment we're very susceptible to becoming angry, wanting to retaliate verbally, perhaps not physically, or certainly to have angry thoughts. Anger is the greatest obstacle to our practice, the greatest enemy. We don't have the ability to turn it off like a tap or a switch, but we do have the ability to train progressively to reduce it, to accept the results of our karma, to understand that all things happen through cause and effect. Therefore, there is no one to blame. There is no inherently existent person that we can blame. On a foundation of moral discipline and patience, then we can put more effort into our practice. Practice will become stronger and more powerful. And when we have begun to lay a foundation for these first 4 perfections, then we can begin to make real progress in meditation and concentration, and begin to get control of our mind on a deeper level, enhance our mental qualities, gain the actual realizations of the Dharma path. And with all of these 5 method practices as the foundation, then we can move to the ultimate practice, the training, the transcending perfection of wisdom, the final antidote to suffering. Through this training, we can become free from the fears and dangers of samsara. We can reach a state of realization where nothing can touch us, nothing can harm us, and where we have limitless ability to benefit others. Through the practice of wisdom and concentration combined, we will ultimately be able to attain the state of full enlightenment, bring limitless benefit to all sentient beings eternally. So please cherish this aspiration at the center of your hearts to practice the Mahayana Dharma, not just now, in this moment, but from day to day, from year to year, from lifetime to lifetime. So make this our dedication through the positive karma, the merit that I have created this evening, this week, this term, this year, this lifetime, in all my lifetimes. Through all that accumulation of merit, may I quickly be able to complete practices of the path and attain full enlightenment in order to be able to benefit all beings, free them from suffering, and in turn bring them to complete enlightenment. Page 22. Jang Chum Sem Chuk Rinpoche Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyoji Ke Wanyam Pa Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Pel Wa Shao Ke Wadi Yin Yo Du Da Lama Sangye Du Gyo Ne Dro Wa Chi Kyang Ma Lu Pa De Yi Sa La Ge Pa Sho. Long life prayers. Dum so chang xing jam gun gel wei tan zin ke pel wei kun ze dog po ze chok song kor wei leg men tu dru pa dak sok du je gun du shab tan chok gang ri ra wei kor wei xing kam dia Pendang Dewa Malu Jung Wei Ne Chen Re Zi Wang Tenzin Gatso Yi Jape Si Te Badu Tang Yo Chi. Thank you very much, everyone. Did you want to say something? Sorry,
No,
no?
coughing.
Oh. Okay. If you're not both rushing off, if I could have a